Hi, I'm Glenn Rogers, and this is American Perspectives. Today, we're going to be talking about starting alternative schools. Why would we need to do that? Well, because of what's being taught in our public educational system. Socialism, critical race theory, Project 1619, and more. We need basically some alternative schools so that we can control what our children are learning. We need thousands of new schools across the country, K through 12 and colleges. But that's not an easy thing to do. So how can we accomplish that? That's what we're going to talk about in this video today. But first, I'd like to take just a few seconds and ask you to help us out by subscribing to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything. Nobody bothers you. There's a little button down on the below where you can just click on it. And all it does is basically is just tell YouTube that you like the content here. And it moves the video up through their algorithm so that more people have an opportunity to see it. But it'd be really great if you could do that. Maybe hit the little thumbs up button. And you can also share this video by clicking share, and you can send it to other media. And there's a comment section. Any of that stuff that you can do would be really helpful to us. So why do we need to start alternative schools in America? We have an extensive public school system. Why would we need to start more private schools? Basically because of the things that our children are being taught. I mean, it's one thing to say the level of education has gone down so much that we have too many kids who can't read, who can't write, who can't think. That's all true, by the way. But that's not the biggest problem. That's not the most serious problem. What our kids are being taught is the problem. And our kids are being taught to hate America. They're being taught that socialism is the solution to our problems. They're being taught that all white people are white supremacists. They're being taught that biological sex is irrelevant, and a whole lot more. And because of those things, we need new schools. Okay? Now, somebody says, well, wait a minute. Why don't we just fix the existing system? Why do we need to establish a bunch of new schools? Well, the basic answer is because the system that exists now is too broken to fix. It just is too far gone. Okay? You can't fire the Marxist professors or other leftist teachers. There are laws in place that protect them, so you can't really get rid of them. And there are too many of them in the system, and many of them are in very powerful positions, and they control the system, and that's why the system is as messed up as it is. And so the existing K through 12 school system is just shot to pieces. Now, let me add this one caveat in here, okay? You may live in a small community somewhere in this country, probably in the Midwest, most likely, where it's a small community and you still have a pretty good, maybe even a really good school system. And if you do, that's great. I'm really glad to hear that. When I was a professor up in Iowa, we had a number of students in our school that had grown up in small towns, small schools, and they, got a really good education and didn't have a lot of this other stuff being pushed on them. But that is not the case, generally speaking, across the country. And we need to do something about what's going on. And it's not just in K through 12, it's in colleges and universities as well. And in fact, they are probably more problematic even than the K through 12 system at this time. But it's filtering down. What used to exist only in the colleges is filtering down and now exists in elementary school as well. And it's just too big of a problem to fix. So we need an alternative system. So what are we going to have to do? What's going to have to happen? What are American parents and grandparents going to have to do to establish alternative schools for our children so that we are once again in control of what they're learning rather than the liberal system and the state being in control of what they're learning? Well, I've got several things that I want to mention today that will need to happen in order for us to develop an alternative educational system. And the first thing is that we're going to have school-friendly laws in each state for establishing private schools, okay? And it differs from state to state. If you go to Louisiana, it's fairly simple to set up a school there, a new school, or at least it used to be. I haven't been involved in that end of things for a few years now, and maybe something has changed. But when I was involved in that sort of that aspect of education, Louisiana was a good place to start a private school. On the other hand, there are some states where they make it just about as hard as it can be because they want to exercise very, very tight control over the school and the curriculum and what's taught. And that's not a very school-friendly place. And I'm not going to get into naming states that are easy or hard or whatever. I used Louisiana as an example. But it wouldn't be hard for you to find out what your state requirements are. But in order to have school-friendly laws for establishing private schools, you need to write your state representatives. You need to make it clear to them that they need to enact laws and policies that make it easier, not harder, to establish private schools so that their parents have some sort of alternative to the public school system. The second thing is that we need to have a voucher system so that parents can decide where they want their school tax dollars to go. Now, this is not a new proposal. I didn't come up with it. It's been around for a very long time, and it's been argued back and forth. But it's worth arguing about some more. It's worth bringing up again. And it's the idea that a portion of your taxes every year, when you pay your federal taxes, a portion of that goes to education. And the Department of Education and school boards and those sorts of people figure out what they're going to do with your money. And someone a long time ago came up with the idea that maybe the people who are paying those taxes should have some say in where that money goes. And the idea is that the government would issue you a voucher based upon the taxes that you pay so that you have X number of dollars that are going to go toward education, and you get to decide what school gets those dollars. And that way, if you want to put your kids in a private school, you have money to do that. Instead of the money going to the existing system, which is shot through with liberalism and all sorts of other things that you probably would prefer not be going on in your school, you get to decide where that money goes. And again, this is something where you need to speak up. You need to write your federal representatives and your state representatives and talk about this, talk about the idea of you being able to decide where your educational tax dollars go. It's your money, you earned it, you're paying it. Why shouldn't you have some say over where that money goes? The third thing is that if we're going to set up schools that are going to be functional and popular and do the job that needs to be done, in the very early stages of development, the new school, the people who are involved in that, need to write a very nice school constitution that states what their educational philosophy is and outlines what that school will be teaching so that parents know exactly what their students will be taught. School needs to be very clear about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And that should include, and this is number 4, it should include an outline of standards and qualifications for teachers and for hiring faculty and administration. You see, the problem with the school system now is that it's filled up with liberal teachers who are very socialist and Marxist in their orientations, or somehow left-wing in their orientation in other areas, and they're not getting the job done. Okay, so we're going to set up new schools. Who are we going to hire to teach in these schools? The school constitution has to have some sort of outline there which says we're looking for these kind of people. These are their educational qualifications, and these are the other things that need to be the case. And I think it needs to be okay to say that our teachers here need to be proud, patriotic American citizens who believe in American exceptionalism, and who are going to talk about that in their classrooms, so that instead of students who end up hating America because we're such a bad, nasty place, they end up graduating actually being proud to be an American. And so we need to have standards for people that are going to be hired to teach in these new schools. And number 5, there needs to be a curriculum that is an exceptional curriculum that makes it certain that children are going to know what they need to know to function in the 21st century America. They need to be taught reading and writing and arithmetic, which we would think would be givens, and English and world history and American history and social studies, civics and government, science, both physical and biological science. Basically, they need a very well-rounded, thorough curriculum that's going to give them the education they need to be productive citizens. And right now, they're not getting that in public school. Now, there are some students who are just really, really good students, and they come from a home situation where their parents are involved and their parents are helping them with their homework and things like that, and they graduate from the public school system pretty good students, pretty smart, and they go into a university system and they do okay. But that's not true for most. That's true for some. It's not true for most. And if we're going to establish some new schools to offer as an alternative to the public school system, then these new schools need to have a really fine curriculum that will prepare the students in ways they need to be prepared. Number 6, the tuition must be affordable. And there needs to be a generous scholarship program for needy families. The very first thing that comes up when you talk about private schools is we can't afford to send our kids to private school. We're barely making it as it is. And there are a lot of people in that situation. Well, we need to have some scholarship programs, and that's just got to be part of how it all works. Number 7, faculty compensation has to be adequate. If not generous, at least adequate, so that you can hire quality teachers who are actually qualified to do their work and do it well. You can't offer somebody $25,000 or $30,000 a year and expect them to take that job and work hard to do that job. That's not enough money. That's just not enough money, and private schools need to pay more than that. And that means that they're going to have somebody in that school, whether it's a paid position like a development officer or whether it's board members or somebody, but somebody's going to have to do some fundraising on behalf of that school. And they're going to have to bring in money so that they can not only meet their expenses, but so that they can offer the scholarships that are necessary. And I would suggest that if they're going to hire a developmental officer, somebody who's going to be a fundraiser, that person's salary be at least in part a commission sort of a setup to where he or she earns a percentage of how much money they bring into the school. Otherwise, it's really easy to get somebody who's just sitting there collecting their salary and they're not bringing any money in. And we need to learn from private colleges how to get money into the institution, but we need to learn to do that at the elementary school level as well. Now, there is no question that this is going to be a difficult thing to do. It's going to take time, it's going to take money, it's going to take hard work. But what alternative do we have? If we can't change the existing school system, and as somebody who was in higher education and for many years, I'm convinced that we cannot change the existing system. I would be delighted if I turned out to be wrong. It would be great if we could change the existing system. But if we can't, then what alternative do we have but to set up alternative schools? What alternative do we have? So if you've got kids or grandkids in American public schools, you need to be looking into helping to set up alternative schools. But even if we do that by itself, that's not enough. There's more to this than school, because this left-wing stuff that's being taught to our children is not just in the school. They're exposed to this stuff in movies, on TV, on the internet, in magazines, in books, all over the place. They hear it from their friends, okay? So you need to spend time protecting your kids and your grandkids from what's going on in society right now, because some of it is really ugly and it's hurting our children. Those are my thoughts for today. I hope you found it interesting or helpful. I want to ask you again to consider subscribing to the channel. Click the little button down below and maybe give it a thumbs up. Share this with someone else. You can send it to other media or other people that you think might enjoy hearing this. I also want to remind you that I have a book that you might enjoy. This one's called A Bunch of Really Good Reasons to Be a Republican, and it's a brief history of both the Republican and the Democratic parties and what they stand for, and might be something that you'd find helpful. Excuse me. So thank you again for tuning in today. I hope that you will watch some more of our videos. Thanks.